like to bring up on the stage both Heidi Gardner and Ivan Matviak. Heidi and Ivan are the CEOs of Smarter Collaboration and the Gardner Group, and they're also the authors of Smart Collaboration and Smarter Collaboration, which are two fantastic books, and I think we're going to be distributing or giving you access to the books. When I first started reading, I think it was the Smarter Collaboration book, I was reading the book because I think Tyann or somebody had introduced it to me, and I'm flipping through, and then I'm reading, and the next thing you know, I'm taking screenshots of all the graphs in the book, and I'm sending out to the teams, like, have you seen this? Have you seen this? Anyway, it's a fantastic set of material that you'll get a chance to read. These folks are doing great work, and it's really, really applicable to some of the concepts that we're talking about today. So I'm very, very pleased to bring up Heidi and Ivan. Thank you, guys.
Oh, hi.
Thanks, Lee.
Thanks, Lee.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
That was lame. Good morning, everyone. If I can have this level of energy having just gotten off a plane, we can amp it up a little bit from folks who aren't jet lagged. So.
Good morning. So we're going to talk today about the ideas of smarter collaboration. It's a concept that we're incredibly passionate about because we know that if you adopt some of these behaviors, if you live it and breathe it in what you do every day, you will be more successful. And not only will you be more successful, but your teams will be more successful and your organizations will be more successful. So we're going to dive in today. We want this to be an interactive session. Please raise your hand, jump in, ask questions. Let's have a little fun.
Absolutely. So there are a few myths about collaboration that we're going to bust while we're together here. One of the first is that when you hear the term collaboration, a lot of people go, oh, it's a soft skill. Nope, sorry. It is not a soft skill. It is not soft in the sense that it is hard and difficult, and it is hard and quantifiable. And when we talk about smarter collaboration, we're talking about a business imperative. The reason you need to engage this way is because there are two trends that have been bubbling up for quite some time, and now they are like trains crashing into each other. The first should sound familiar to you: specialization. Right? This is not our research. People have been researching this and writing about it. Once Malcolm Gladwell latches onto something, you know it's been popular for quite some time. The idea is that knowledge is changing so fast that you need a 2-word brand or maybe a 3-word brand so that people know when to pick up the phone and call you. What is it that you're brilliant at? What is it that you're passionate about? What is it that you truly want to go deep, deep, deep? Now, at the same time that you're getting deep, you're probably getting narrower because we only have 24 hours in a day. So to put your boundaries around some area of expertise and you go deep, you also go narrow. But at the same time, the other trend is that our problems are increasingly VUCA. You probably know this acronym: volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. Think about it like this: big, multifaceted problems and narrow, deep experts. The only way you can tackle those effectively is to team up, to find somebody with adjacent expertise, with a different perspective, a different point of view, somebody who defines the problem and the solution space differently than you do. That's how we tackle these complex challenges. Are you with me? All right, so over to you. You heard Elizabeth and Lee say that the point of today is to talk to each other. And we're going to put a little of that in the spirit of what we're doing right now. Have a quick conversation, 3-4 minutes with folks at your table. What are some of the most VUCA, and if you can't remember the whole acronym, just focus on the C for complexity. What are the most complex challenges and opportunities that you're facing right now? And what's on the mind of your clients? What are those high-value, sophisticated, complex issues that are keeping your clients awake at night? Over to you for a few minutes. We'll call you back to order.
So what were some of the big ideas that came up? What did you guys talk about? I heard a lot of good conversation at a couple of tables. We'll cold call, so. Any volunteers?
I'll
Yes.
volunteer then. So I think we had a couple of opposite ends of the spectrum. One being, well, actually, we don't think there's any problem with our CRM system. It's fine, and we're using it, and it's fine. To the other end of the spectrum, where it's like, actually, we think CRM is the magic wand for everything, and forget that there's a behaviour by the end user that needs to be addressed. So
all right.
two ends perspective.
So keeping in touch with clients and customers generally can be a complex issue, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Talking about actually getting clients' attention, because they're so overwhelmed with what's happening in industry, we've got different verticals, trying to get them focused on the things that really are interesting to them.
It is a noisy, noisy market, yeah, without a doubt. So how do you cut through? How do you capture people's attention in the most compelling way? Yeah. Anything else?
Yeah, one of the points that we found is quite a lot of our clients are struggling with their own businesses and are transferring some of those issues into the requests they're making to us, basically, and how we solve them, which can be quite tricky.
Yeah, without a doubt.
So looking to partners to help them solve some of these complex problems. And that's exactly right. When we talk about collaboration, we're talking about collaboration within your organizations, within teams, but also with your clients, most importantly, right? How are you really working together with them to solve some of those big complex issues? Absolutely. When we talk about collaboration, there's a lot of misconceptions about what collaboration means. Heidi mentioned that it's not a soft skill. It's also not about big group hugs. A lot of people think about a collegial culture, but if you're really collaborating well, you're debating ideas, and that can be quite uncomfortable, actually. So it's not about having a collegial environment. I mean, I like working in a collegial environment, but to really get at the concepts of smarter collaboration, you're debating issues, you're really challenging each other, and that's hard work and can actually be quite uncomfortable at points. It's also not about throwing a team at every problem. Sometimes working individually, sometimes just putting your head down and driving through a problem is the right answer, right? You don't need a team for every problem. And in fact, sometimes if you bring too many people together who don't know why they're in the room, they'll find their head on the table, they're sleeping, they're snoring, they don't know why they're in the room, right? So one little bit of advice, if you're in a meeting and you don't know why you're there, challenge the person organizing the meeting. What value am I adding? Why am I here? What do you want out of me? A lot of leaders also think that they're wonderful collaborators. They've got lots of underlings who are there, they're giving great direction and guidance, and they're saying, okay, go forth and do good work. Well, that's not really collaboration. That's delegation, which is an important skill. But collaborating is really reaching into the minds of the people that are around you, pulling out those different points of view and having those good, hard debates. And the last thing that it's not, and this is for those of you who are in business development, might know this phrase. There's one word that clients dislike in some ways more than any other. Anybody guess what that is?
So many professional firms have this as part of their strategy, and they're convinced that they should do more and more and more of this, and that it's synonymous with collaboration. And yet when people say it mistakenly in front of clients, the clients run away screaming with their ears bleeding.
It's a little bit like that, the painting, The Scream. It's like it's running. Anybody know what that word is? Cross-selling. Well done. Who said cross-selling? Outstanding. It's cross-selling. Exactly right. Why cross-selling? Why don't they like cross-selling?
In our firm, we consider it a dirty word, and it's a turn off. The selling part is sales and marketing.
It's like, what, buy a watch?
100% right. Yeah, cross-selling is a little bit, cross-selling tends to be very internally focused. It's what you want to push onto the client as opposed to being client solution focused. What does the client really need? And in fact, cross-selling is a little bit like saying, do you want fries with that?
So when we talk about what it's not, then we have to get into, well, what is it? Right? It's that teaming up. It's combining different perspectives, different ways of looking at problems and solutions. And in the work that we have done, we've quantified what value it adds. Right? So we're about to show you some data. It's disguised. There's no way you're going to figure out which firm this is, I promise you. So, focus on the big picture. Don't try and investigate which firm this is. But what we're showing you is a professional services firm that we worked with in 2017 and then through 22. And we were trying to understand what value did collaboration add to their clients. So when they were teaming up across different services, think of it as practice groups or offerings. When they were teaming up, how much value did they add to clients? And we measured the value by how much revenue was produced. We assume that they are very smart clients. They only pay for the value that they get. And so when we started working with them, I know those numbers are teeny tiny, but you can see the size of the bars increases, somewhat with each incremental service that joined the mix to serve a client. Clients that were served by just a single service produced 160,000. Clients with 2 services, 320, so 1 + 1 = 2. When you got up to 3 services, I think the number is 550, 530, something like that. So you get a little extra bang for the buck with the 3rd service that was provided. In the better firms that we work with, 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2. 1 + 1 = 3. 1 + 1 + 1 = 5 or 6. Why? Why is a client willing to sort of overpay when you've got additional services joining the mix? Well, it's because you're adding that much more value. You're not just going in and offering a point solution. You're able to tackle the more sophisticated, complex issues that they're facing. We at Gardner & Co. work with a lot of corporates. Sometimes they're corporate legal departments. We've worked with commercial real estate in the past. What we're hearing right now is the kinds of VUCA issues that are on their minds. Things like, geopolitics and the effects that it has on supply chain, inflation, and how that is affecting consumer behavior and demand and forecasting, right? These are big macro issues that they are concerned about. And offering a single point of view is risky. And if you're a law firm or another kind of professional services firm and you're offering just one perspective on these big complex issues, it's up to the general counsel to play general contractor and have to pull all these different pieces together. And so what we see by 2022 is a big change. This firm not only started serving their bigger clients with 8 different services, whereas previously the max had been 5, but see how much extra revenue is generated. Now, some of this, of course, is fee increases, but that doesn't account for anything like the growth that you see here. What's also really important is look at the shape of the curve. Here you see, maybe you can't see it, but just, you can't see the actual numbers, but look how much incremental value each successive service adds. What is happening here is rather than having a number of different partners out serving clients almost independently, which is what had happened previously, they're joining forces. They're acting as key client teams. They're coming back to the office. They're having regular meetings. What are you seeing at this client? How can we proactively offer up solutions before they even know to ask? And they implemented a sector-based program, a sector-based go-to-market program, so that they put in industry verticals that cut across their practice groups. And that allowed them to develop a strong point of view. What's this firm's point of view on renewables and what's going to happen with big major trends? They got out in front from the industry perspective, and it allowed them to add significantly more value. Now, at the same time, what you also saw early on, they had a really long tail problem, right? They had 2,000 plus clients that were served by just a single service and producing just really small amounts of revenue, right? And another 1,000 that had only 2. After a 5-year really concerted effort, they cut that tail in half. So some of those clients were migrated along the curve. They were able in a very client-centric way, not in a cross-selling, hey, let me shove more stuff at you that you don't need way, but in a very client-centric way. They were able to approach clients and migrate them up the value curve. They started serving more and more and more senior people inside their client organizations with more holistic offerings. Right? And then there were some clients that they migrated out of the firm. Remember, strategy is as much about saying no as it is about saying yes. And people with a very clear strategy understood that they wanted to serve clients that wanted to partner with this firm. Right? And that allowed them to focus on adding all of this extra value to the more sophisticated clients. You with me? Right, so, in our work, in the book you're going to have access to, actually both our books, chapter 1 is called The Business Case for Collaboration, right? We talk about the quantifiable benefits of collaboration, including revenues and profits, but also risk reduction and innovation and a whole host of other outcomes that we know are possible and indeed probable when people across the firm are engaging in smarter collaboration.
And not only do we do this type of quantitative analysis, we also we do a lot of research. We write a lot of cases, we do a lot of interviewing of clients, and talk to executives about what's important to them, and particularly what do they want from their service providers. And we just thought we'd share a couple of quotes here that really resonated with us. The first was, just being a strong technician, just being that narrow expert no longer cuts it. And being responsive, we hear a lot of clients say, we're great with clients because we're responsive. Clients are saying that being responsive, that's client service 101. That's table stakes. Nobody gets a gold star for just being responsive. It's really about understanding deeply where the client's needs are. This executive also said, I expect my advisors to have a deep grasp of my business and to understand the industry dynamics and where things are going. That's that sector expertise that Heidi talked about, right? Really not only understanding your products and services, but understanding the industry that the client is playing in. What are the challenges that they're facing? What are the competitive dynamics that they're facing? What are some of those VUCA issues? And how are you going to bring to bear the expertise within your firm across silos, across geographies, to really address some of those challenges? And lastly, he said, bring me insights. Help me see around corners. Don't just bring a colleague in and tell me, oh, we have Jane here who's a tax expert. Would you like to talk? No. Bring me insights. Why is bringing Jane in going to help me? Why is you and Jane working together going to help me solve problems that I couldn't solve by myself? And this was a Fortune 50 chief executive that we talked to in this case.
And so when you're thinking about outcomes of smarter collaboration, it's one thing to be thinking about the near term, right? Revenues and profits this year, how are we going to increase our innovation, not just the speed of innovation, but also how quickly it's adopted. Another way to think about the outcomes of smarter collaboration is a bit longer term. And so we initially had a sample of 300 clients of a US-based accounting firm, or the US arm of a major accounting firm, and we asked them this question. We've since replicated this across a whole range of sectors and geographies. The question was simple. If your relationship partner departed, what would you do? Would you remain with the firm or seek another provider? And what you see is that about 3/4 of the clients that are served by a single partner would walk, or at least consider walking, right? And by the way, departed was left deliberately ambiguous. It could mean, went to a competitor, retired, kidnapped by aliens. We don't know, but if the person's gone, what do you do? And it's kind of obvious that if you got one major contact and that person departs, you're going to think twice about whether you stay with the firm. What do you think the data looks like for clients that are served by multiple partners, 2 or more? Any guesses? The inverse? That's kind of aggressive, Ryan. Any other guesses? Well, not aggressive enough. Okay, so multiples more loyal clients. Or actually, when we talked, we went and we asked them why. I said, why are you so loyal? And they pushed back. They said, we're not loyal. Loyal has this idea of like friendship and fealty and whatever. It's not that we're loyal, we're kind of stuck. So we started calling it client stickiness instead. But we find, it's the point that, David Maister's been making since the early 90s about institutionalizing clients. It's obvious in some ways that if you've got a team in there serving the client, they're a little bit stuck because you have so many people who know the client in all the ways that Ivan was just describing, that chief executive was talking about. You know our business, you know the politics behind it, you know our industry, you're advising us. You're not just answering our questions when we ring you. Right? So all of that helps to make clients far, far, far stickier. Now, the first time I presented this data was here in the UK, and I'm not going to do the accent justice, but there was a gentleman in the audience, and he raises his hand and he says, "This is from the land of the bleeding obvious." Huh. All right then. Good thing I had anticipated that somebody might say that, so we had crunched the data in his firm. And I said, well, good sir, if it's so obvious, what do you think your firm looks like? What proportion of your clients are served by a single partner? Oof, ouch. It was way over 50%. So common sense isn't common practice. Thinking about this, how are you putting it into action? Now you put it together with the data we looked at earlier, and you've got this really long tail problem with only a whole bunch of clients served by a single service, a single practice group, a single offering. It's not just that those are lower revenue and lower profitability clients, they're also fragile relationships. You put the data together and it's not where you want to be. It's why understanding who in your firm has connections throughout a client organization is so vital for you to be able to capitalize on that.
Heidi mentioned that the first chapter of the book talks about the business case for collaboration, and you saw some of the numbers, right? You saw that exponential curve that you can achieve when people within the organization are collaborating across silos. The second chapter of the book is about the talent case for collaboration. Why is it good for your people when they're collaborating? And you may have heard of the Gallup organization. They do massive studies every year on engagement. They've got millions and millions of records over a 40-year period that looks at what drives engagement in an organization. And there's one phrase above all the others, one question above all the others that is most indicative of whether an individual feels engaged in their organization, and it's this one. At work, I have the opportunity to do what I do best every day. Right, we talked about specialization and the importance of collaboration. If you're specialized and you're asked to do things that are outside of your wheelhouse, you're not doing what you do best every day. But when you're able to collaborate with people, when you're able to bring in people with complementary expertise, that allows you to focus on what you're great at and do what you do best every day. And so we looked at, we crunched some of the data and looked at organizations where there is high agreement with this phrase and organizations where there's lower agreement with this phrase. And the organizations with higher agreement are the green bars. People generally in those organizations feel like they have the opportunity to do what they do best every day. And the gray bars are the weaker alignment and weaker engagement. And the difference in outcomes across these groups is really quite dramatic. If we look at customer satisfaction, it's 10% higher in organizations where they have a high degree of agreement here and a high sense of engagement within the organization. Productivity is 14% higher. Sales is 18% higher. Profitability is 23% higher. Can anybody guess what the last bar is? What's the highest differential? What was it? Retention. Employee retention. 40% higher. If you guys are in the law industry, you may have read some of the articles recently about the cost of lateral hires and the massive 8-figure salaries that are being paid for some of these very senior lateral rainmakers these days. Well, you can imagine the massive cost to the organization of recruiting them, but imagine the cost of losing them, right? That retention at every level, whether it's somebody straight out of a law degree program or straight out of business school if you're in the consulting industry, or expensive lateral hires, the return on investment when you can retain talent is massive. And the cost to the organization, not just the financial cost, but also the cost of client relationships is massive when you aren't able to retain them. But collaboration also isn't easy. If it were easy, we'd all be doing it.
And we'd be out of a job.
And we'd be out of a job. And we wouldn't get to speak at events like this. So we studied, we did a lot of research trying to analyze what are some of the barriers to collaboration? What gets in the way? And some of these numbers might resonate with you. We heard a range of things like time pressure. I'm just too busy. Collaboration takes work, right? I need to find out who I want to collaborate with. I need to invest in those relationships. I need to build trust in those people. That takes work. And I'm busy. I've got deadlines to meet. I need to keep moving. Right? So that's a massive barrier. Structure and incentive systems is also a barrier. I'm not paid to collaborate. I get measured on my own performance. Why am I going to share my revenue with somebody else? Why am I going to give credit to somebody else? So those incentive systems can be a massive barrier. Skills is a big barrier. People just don't know how to collaborate well. They don't know what good looks like. And trust is also a massive barrier. And Heidi's going to talk a little bit about this in a minute, so I won't spend too much time on it. But we think about two types of trust. One is competence trust. Do I believe you're good at what you do? Because if I don't believe you're good at what you do, I'm not going to bring you into my project. And if others don't believe you're very strong at what you do, they're less likely to bring you into their project as well. So competence trust is a big factor. But interpersonal trust is a big factor as well. I'm not going to invite you into a project if I think you're a jerk, right? Or if I think you're going to take credit for the work, right? Or if I think by bringing you in, you might steal my client, right? So that kind of interpersonal trust and competence trust are both critical factors in helping drive collaboration within an organization.
So we collect this data when we go to work with a new company, a new firm. We go in and do a diagnostic. That tends to be our first, there we go. That tends to be our first entry point. Now, what I'm going to say might resonate a little bit with you, but it doesn't make us particularly popular with the top brass, because what we find is the initial hypothesis of people very senior in an organization, number one, about how well collaboration is working, is usually pretty far off. And then even if they acknowledge that collaboration isn't happening as consistently, effectively, frequently as they want, their understanding of these barriers is usually pretty far off as well. Why? Well, people at the top just tend to be somewhat insulated from the realities of people on the ground who are trying to work with one another, find the right people, develop that sort of trust. I mean, in short, not that many people say no to Lee or people in Lee's position as the CEO, right? If you're at the top of an organization, you have a bit of a skewed view of what collaboration looks like. So my point is, if you're interested in tackling collaboration challenges, you really have to get a handle on what's standing in the way of collaboration, and you have to get that data from people who are engaging in it day in and day out. But one of the questions we get a lot is WIFM. You know WIFM, what's in it for me? So as Ivan was saying, there's all of these barriers associated with it, one of which is the amount of time that it takes to build these kinds of collaborative relationships and nurture them. And so we wanted to figure out not only is collaboration beneficial to the organization, right? We measured that in all those ways that we talked about. We also know that it benefits the client for the reasons we discussed, but what about the individuals who are building these relationships and putting all the time and effort in when they could be doing something else? So when I was still back at Harvard Business School, where I started my teaching career, we had an amazing research associate called John Ng. I always want to give him credit because he combed through millions of data records. I mean, we literally have millions and millions of records. Some law firms, some other professional firms, some companies have dumped on us a decade's worth of data. Don't panic, it's de-identified. So we don't know who the people are, but we tend to be able to know a lot about them by marrying different kinds of records together. And so John combed through these files and found two people who are so similar to one another, we joke that they're twins. So professionally, we chose, in this case, we'll share with you two partners in a professional service firm. They're in the same firm, which is really important to remember, because as we're comparing them and their behaviors and outcomes, remember, in the same firm, it means they have the same REM system, the same leadership, the same culture, all of that kind of stuff. So it's kind of like controlling for those issues. So they were in the same practice group. They both happen to be men, so we're going to call them he. It's not a bias, it's a fact pattern. But we looked at their collaboration pattern. Do you know how to read one of these maps? No? Okay, so every dot here is a partner in the same firm. They're color-coded, if you can see it. They're color-coded by practice group. The one who's circled is the twin number one that we're studying. The lines connecting them signify that those people have worked together for a threshold amount of time on the same project for the same client, right? They were billing time to the same file, basically. And they were engaging with each other for a significant amount of time in the year that we were studying. So we didn't measure collaboration behaviors, but all of the data traces suggest that they were collaborating with one another pretty significantly. Now, I'm going to ask you a really tough question. What's your name? Allison? Allison, take as much time as you need. Deep breath. You ready? I'm going to ask a tough question. Do you notice anything different about Twin 2? What do you notice, Allison? What's different about the way Twin 2 collaborates?
Twin 2's doing very well in collaboration.
Yeah, he's doing super well. How do you know? What do you see? What do you observe?
Many points, many partners, many relationships.
Yeah.
Many more projects.
Yes, absolutely. So it's a bigger network, really jumps out at you, right? Many, many, many more partners that he's collaborating with. Do you notice anything else? It's not a trick question. Yeah. I mean, it's like everyone always does this when they try to describe it, right? It's like the crazy spider web. Twin 2 chooses to collaborate with people who themselves are well connected. We'll come back to the so what's in a minute. You might also be able to see there's lots of colors here. It represents a more diverse network. He's accessing more different practice groups across the firm. Okay, so what's the so what? We looked at their business outcomes. Both Twin 1 and Twin 2 were relationship partners for specific clients, so we were able to examine client outcomes, revenue growth, profitability, sustainability of the relationship. We also looked at some talent outcomes, like engagement scores and talent retention. And compared to the performance of Twin 1, Twin 2's performance was 4 times higher. So, quick question. What is Twin 2 getting out of his collaboration that allows him to be such a higher performer? I mean, some of you probably are Twin 2s, right? How does it help you boost performance? More knowledge. Yeah. We'll come back in a sec. More knowledge. That, when sociologists examine a network diagram like this, they talk about resources and assets flowing through those lines, and knowledge, information, intelligence, all of that flows through, right? That he has access to all kinds of things. And think what that does for him. When he's sitting across from a client and they use some, new acronym, blah, 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 he's much more likely to have at least heard that once before, right? His radar is tuned, he's gonna pick up on it, and he might say at that point, you know, I'm not an expert in that thing, but I do know that there are people back at the firm who are working on it really actively right now. It sounds like you're concerned about that. Would you like to have a quick conversation with them? Now, all of a sudden, he's opened up an opportunity for more collaboration in a way that's incredibly client-centric. They're going to welcome that approach as opposed to feeling like they were getting, you know, fries offered to them. Right? And he can do that because he's got the knowledge coming from all of these different people about what's hot, what are the hot topics. There was some other benefit that he gets. What was it?
Well, no, I was just saying, obviously, the fact that he's only one individual, but he's got the power of multiple individuals and developed an increased income for himself as well as the rest of the market.
Absolutely. He's not just feeding himself, he's creating meals for all of these people around him, without a doubt.
And it goes both ways, right? So Twin 2 is pulling people into the projects that he's working on, right, and getting the benefit of that expertise. But it's bi-directional as well. Other people are pulling Twin 2 into their projects because they know where his expertise is. He's developed the trust with this network.
And the trust thing is really important as well, right? That T word, trust, permeates everything. So because they've worked together so much, they know how good the other people are, right? That competence trust that I've mentioned, but they also are able to trust each other's character, right? That's one of the benefits of a dense network, as you know, researchers would call this a dense network where people are highly interconnected, is they're more likely to behave themselves. Right? And then, has anyone ever played the party game of 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon? Yeah? I mean, Twin 2, right? He's connected, and his connections have connections. So if he does come back to the office and tries to find the expert in that new thing that his client just mentioned, he's only one phone call away from dozens and dozens and dozens of other people because of his connections. And he trusts them, so when they make a referral, he'll trust the referral. You see how this compounds, it really builds on itself. Right? The challenge, though, is getting this kick-started early enough so that people can build this before they actually need it.
And in a lot of organizations, a big challenge is knowing who to collaborate with. Right? Where is the expertise in the organization? Who knows a particular client? Who knows who's an expert in a particular subject? And so tools like IntroHive can be particularly helpful there because it gives you access to information about who knows what, who knows who, and how do you pull that information so that you can start to develop some of those networks. We should probably keep going.
Should we keep going? We're not going to take time for a breakout.
Do you want to do? We can do.
Let's do.
We can do 2 minutes.
Yeah, let's do a couple of minutes because we really want you to be thinking about this. We know. I mean, I spent all day yesterday teaching at Harvard Business School, and you know, I've been well steeped in the belief that adults, I think everybody, but adults have been studied a lot, learn best if you get to apply the ideas in real time. So we're going to give you like 2 minutes right now to put some of this into practice, or at least consider it. Reflect on your own network map. If you were going to draw your own spider web, as some people call it, if you were going to draw that, what is missing? Now, one of the important things to think about, Allison, the first thing you noticed about Twin 2 is that he had more dots. But bigger isn't better. Better is better. Once you say it out loud, it's kind of obvious, right? But Twin 2 had a better network, not only because it was more colorful, he was connected to more connectors and things, but we didn't mention he's off to the side, right? What does that mean? Well, he's pushed off to the side because some of his connections are really close to him and some of those lines connecting him are really long. That is the intensity of collaboration, how frequently they had worked together. And because some of those lines are really long, it suggests that he's super intentional about how he uses his network. So he's got a higher quality network and he uses it more intentionally. So think for a moment about what changes you can make, either in how you build out your network or how you're using your network. Just take a couple of minutes, have a discussion at your table, and we'll call you back to order before we wrap up. Okay, let's come back together. If you can wrap up your conversations, Can we really quickly access, let's really quickly access a couple of ideas. Can you name a concrete action, something specific you might do to improve the quality or the use of your network? Any ideas? Bueller. Bueller. Anyone?
Well, we kind of discussed that it needs to be an ongoing thing. It's not just something you can do maybe when you join a new company and you form a network, to understand who's who and to learn. And then sometimes you just rely on that network, whereas actually it should be continuous.
Yeah, constantly refreshing it. Yeah, that makes total sense. Anything else?
I think it's that quality versus quantity point. Actually, it's all very well having a massive network, but unless you're investing your time in the right places and having some approach to prioritisation, actually it's not going to serve you in the right way.
Yeah, 100%. One real quick tip that we can offer is there's great research on what's called dormant ties, dormant as in sleeping. Right? Think of like 4+ years ago and all the people that you saw on a regular basis then who may have sort of dropped out of your orbit. They changed roles or you changed companies or whatever happened. What the research shows is that dormant ties are wildly productive because you used to be close to these people and then circumstances probably kept you apart. But if you reconnect with them in those intervening 4 years, they've done all kinds of things that you don't know about. They've met all kinds of people. Their networks have expanded in ways that are different from yours. So we really encourage you to think about reaching out to somebody that you haven't been in touch with recently. The research also suggests that everyone's super squeamish about that. Oh, well, I haven't called them. Well, they haven't called you either. I mean, if you're out of touch, think about it, right? So reach out to them, reestablish a relationship. It's a great way to refresh the network because you do have to prioritize, you do have to put effort into it. We've got a few ideas that we can walk through right now, but a feedback culture is one of the things that is missing, I dare say, in most professional service firms. I think I'm hypersensitive to it. Ivan was at Bain for a number of years. I don't hold it against him. I was at McKinsey. But McKinsey had a hyperactive feedback culture to the extent that a decade after I left the firm, I was on a panel with a fellow McKinsey former partner. And afterward, we're walking out this really long aisle down this huge ballroom where we had been, and he leans over to me. He's like, "Can I give you some feedback?" I was like, "Ka-ching, yes!" A decade later, he was still willing to invest in me. And it was like the thing he liked the most, the thing that he liked the least, and it was super helpful, right? So it was a hyperactive feedback culture all the time. And I don't think that happens enough amongst partners in professional service firms. So think about, building a feedback culture by role modeling, giving and receiving feedback. The most likely way that you can start a feedback culture is not by walking around and dishing it out, by asking for it. And then really genuinely showing that, you use it for your personal growth. Normalizing regular feedback is super important. At Goldman, they used to have an expression, feedback on the run is better than none, right? Don't hold back and wait for the formal opportunities to give somebody feedback every 6 months. Do it in real time, like that McKinsey partner did while we're walking off the stage. If he had waited, and emailed me later, it would have lost so much effect. He probably actually wouldn't have done it, right? So don't wait for the perfect opportunity. Give somebody a quick observation, one thing for them to think about. It's obvious to say, but clarifying roles and responsibilities is really crucial. If people know exactly what they should be doing, when you can observe them and offer them feedback on it, it is much more likely to be hard-hitting and actionable. And then last, use a bit of structure. And we've been developing a whole range of tools at Smarter Collaboration International to help people do this in a much more constructive, targeted, actionable way. Because we know that this doesn't come naturally. It's not part of everybody's day-to-day MO, but we'd like to make it more of that because Smarter Collaboration hinges on that kind of trusting relationship where you can debate ideas and you can give each other feedback on what's working and what's not.
And it's important to reflect on how you like to collaborate. Different people have different styles. Some people are more naturally wary of others until they get to know them. Some people are highly trusting on day one. Some people like to be more hands-on in problems and really understand what their teams are doing. Other people are more hands-off and happy to let their teams go and run when they're trying to solve a problem. So it's important to reflect on what is your collaborative style. There are a number of psychometrics out there. We have one that's focused on collaboration. But any of them can be very useful in helping you think about where are your go-to tendencies, where are your natural behaviors and comfort zones when it comes to collaboration, and where are the comfort zones for the people that you're working with. So for example, one concept that is around being complex or concrete. Some people love complex, big, ambiguous ideas. They love sort of thinking about the future and really getting into ideas that maybe are really complicated for an organization to solve. Other people are like, no, no, no. What are we going to do about it? What exactly is the next step? Where are we going from here? And how in the world are we going to get that done? And you can imagine how those two very different propensities might clash with one. They both think they're the most important people in the world, right? The complex thinkers are like, well, we're going to solve these massive problems. And the concrete thinkers are saying, yeah, but you have no idea how, right? And so that can create real tension. But when you understand your own behavioral tendencies and you understand those around you, then you can think about how to really make them complement. Because actually, if you want to really innovate, you need both of these types of thinkers. Right? You need people who are able to tackle big, ambiguous problems, but you also need the people who are able to put it into action and actually execute on something. And you're not going to have real breakthrough innovation without both of those. The other thing that's really powerful is getting feedback. And Heidi talked about this a bit on the trust slide. But you may know how you like to behave, but do you know how people actually perceive working with you? How do they experience your collaboration? And some of the questions that you can ask is, what's your approach to conversation with other people? Do you tend to dominate conversations? Do you tend to step back and listen? And how do people experience that with you? Can people tell what you're thinking? Do they know what's on your mind? Right? Are you giving them that open, honest feedback? What's your propensity toward new ideas? Some people really just love to jump to the next new idea and the big thing. Other people are more concrete. They're saying, no, let's focus on what we've already been talking about. Let's execute. Let's make this thing happen before we move on to the next thing. And so getting that kind of feedback, and 360s can be very powerful for that, is incredibly helpful in understanding not only your natural ways of working, but also how are people perceiving and experiencing working with you. And that kind of feedback can really help you pivot and evolve the ways that you're working with your teams and even with your clients.
Yeah, we have some work ongoing with a number of different firms, but I'm thinking about one right now where they're using the 360 tool at their operating board level and then 6 other leadership teams throughout the organization. And it's fascinating to see where they've got blind spots. Right? There are some really common themes where especially the board members have overestimated, they're overconfident in their ability. Things like, no, I never dominate conversations, and I'm really open to new ideas. And everyone around them is going, yeah, not so fast, right? So identifying where those blind spots are is really important way for people to improve how they're engaging with one another.
And if you're a leader in your organization, signaling that you're open to that kind of feedback is incredibly powerful, right? It helps others get comfortable also giving that feedback to each other. If you're welcoming and you're saying, this is important, I want to improve, I want your feedback, I want your input, that opens up a comfort zone for others to do the same.
Without a doubt.
So just to wrap up, we talked about some of the challenges of collaborating in this way. It takes real investment to build up that network, to develop that trust, right? And to build that twin two type of collaborative environment. Fortunately, those costs come down over time. It's a big investment up front, But as you get better at it, as you build up that network, those costs come down over time. The challenge is that the benefits only accrue fairly slowly, right? The benefits on day one tend to be low. But over time, those benefits really start to climb. And the challenge for a leader is to sustain the momentum around collaboration until those lines cross. Because there's that big leap of faith up front, right? You're investing time and effort, and you're not really seeing the benefits come right away. But we know they do. We've seen the benefits from a financial point of view. We've seen the benefits from a talent point of view, both at the organizational level and at the individual level. And so when that collaboration becomes a normal way of working, then the benefits far exceed the costs.
All right, so any questions? We've covered a lot of ground in the last 55 minutes. Any questions? Yeah, Ryan? That was quick.
Hi, I was prepared with the mic, so I've got a question, and
It's a setup.
I have got a comment at the end as well, if I may. But first question: look, seeing this research, seeing the data, it's wake up and take notice type of stuff, no doubt. My question is, how much of this is nature versus nurture when you think about twin 1 to twin 2? How easy is it to shift one to the other?
So if it weren't easy, we'd be sunk, right? I mean, it's not easy, but if it weren't possible, we'd be totally sunk. If people were kind of set in their pattern, the natural hypothesis is that twin 2 is an extrovert, right? Natural to assume. If the data had been based on a survey question about how many people did you socialize with on a weekend, then that's a logical hypothesis, and it's probably true. But Twin 2's network was, how do you get work done for clients by teaming up with your colleagues? And statistically speaking, there is no greater likelihood that Twin 2 is an extrovert than an introvert. What's the superpower that introverts have that allows them to build really high quality networks and use them well?
It tends to be more curious and analytical.
And what else?
Good listeners, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. And that combination of curiosity and listening means that they know pretty well the people around them. They're seeking those people out. They're listening for opportunities, right? And so people can build networks like Twin 2. There has to be a lot of intentionality behind it. There has to be the skill and the will. But it is entirely learnable. And we have seen enormous progress. We've been working in some firms where we measure it over time, and it's really quite impressive.
And I just thought I'd share, if I may, the collaborative effort that we're making with one of our clients, just to bring this to life maybe. So we're working with a global IT services firm together with Heidi and Ivan, and they have a corporate strategy to, guess what, grow revenue. We're working with them to implement some of the ideas that we've heard about today, focus on their key accounts, focus on how we can help them grow their service lines. And they came to us with a question and asked like, how IntroHive can help bring some perspective to this. So if you think about what they know where their revenue is coming from on a service line level for these key accounts, but they have a bit of an opaque view into where revenue is coming from. So they can have their opportunity data. Obviously that will link to the service line, but beyond that, how can we give some window into what's happening? So we've just done a quick bit of analysis for them where we mapped out the service lines. They have 12, and their key accounts that we're working through, and we identify the key buying personas across those service lines, and we're very quickly able to give a perspective into where they have existing relationships with those buying personas, and where they have what they call relationship gaps, where they have no relationships with the people that would be required to buy those service lines across their key accounts.
And this has really brought sort of a base level of knowledge for them to understand, like, okay, we're getting no revenue, but we have the right relationships versus no revenue and we have no relationships at all. So it's a different style, and we're working with Heidi and Ivan, and we've got a meeting tomorrow actually with the CEO of the company. We're going with Lee and others from the firm to talk about how we can take this data forward and help them drive this strategy. So I just want to lay that out for everyone so you can understand how clients can come to us to use our data, and together with the ideas we've heard about today, we can have a real impact on like the corporate priorities of clients. It's not just pre-meeting digest and the iframe. There's a lot more we can do. So come to us and challenge us with any questions you get from executive teams, etc. So.
Yeah, super, and a really, really exciting project. Listen, we are incredibly passionate about these ideas.
Probably didn't show.
But and enthusiastic about it. Our contact details are there. If you'd like to hear more about it or talk to us about some of the ideas, please reach out. We'd love to hear from you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.